Victim offender mediation and conferencing is the oldest and most widely used form of restorative justice throughout the world, now with programs in more than 1,300 communities in 17 different countries. And victim offender conferencing and mediation is grounded in very core restorative justice values, which emphasize the importance of allowing those who are most directly affected by crime, victims, offenders, family members, community members, to have the opportunity to come together to talk about the impact of the crime, to try to find ways of repairing the harm. Many, many cases, thousands of cases, are now being referred to victim offender mediation and conferencing programs throughout this country. Cases are referred both from juvenile court and in adult court. Most of the cases are property offenses and minor assaults, but many more serious cases are now being referred, and those more violent cases require far more extensive preparation and training of mediators to handle such cases. Through the process of providing a safe opportunity for the person who was victimized to come together with the person who committed the crime, and with support people if they want that, those individuals are able to talk about the real human impact of crime, to go far beyond the legalisms that surround crime and the whole court scenario, and to talk about the real impact on their lives. Victims are able to get answers to many lingering questions. Why me, and how did you select me? Did you have any idea of the impact it had on our families? People who have committed crimes for the first time can hear the real impact of their behavior, that this was not just a violation of some abstract law to them. This was a violation of a person, a family, and it affected the whole community. So the process of victim offender mediation and conferencing is really meant to allow people affected by crime to be engaged in a dialogue, to talk about what really happened, and to focus on repairing the harm.
For the many thousands of cases referred to victim offender mediation and conferencing over the past 20 years, we have learned that a multi-method approach is often the most helpful. By this, we mean that it is far more victim-sensitive and culturally sensitive to adapt the process to the expressed needs of the person who was victimized, the person who committed the offense, their families, cultures, and even their communities. For example, many individual victims and offenders prefer to meet in a small, private setting involving only the two of them and the mediator.
Ms. Mattson and Jim, I want to thank you both for being willing to meet again. As you know, we have each talked separately about your stories, and this is going to be your opportunity to talk together directly to one another about the events surrounding the burglary and how it's affected both of you.
Or, victims and offenders may prefer to have parents or other support people present during the mediation session. While the primary focus is still upon the direct conversation between victim and offender, support people can be given an opportunity to speak as well.
As a friend and a community member, how did this situation affect you?
It's just unsafe. You don't know how they pick houses. How do they pick my house? How do they pick her house? Are they just going back and forth? Is it the same people? What made him stop at her house this time? She could have been there. What would have happened then?
Mrs. Ellison, you're Jim's mom. How has all this affected you?
Well, I'm feeling pretty angry and sad for what he did. And I'm embarrassed. I feel like you think I didn't raise him right. And, Jim is a good kid. He is. I'm just really sad that this happened.
In some cases, depending on the cultural context of the parties involved, the victim and offender may invite numerous family members, support people, and members of their communities to be present at the meeting.
Well, Terrell and I would like to open by thanking each of you for coming tonight and coming, some of you, in support of your friends and neighbors around the event that happened some time ago. involving the burglary of Ms. Matson's home. So we're just going to open it up to whoever would like to begin speaking. If you could think back to the events and how it's affected you since, and speak to Jim and Ms. Matson about how this has affected you.
You know, my daughter and I have lived here for a long time, and we really like this neighborhood. But since this has happened, you know, we're having trouble sleeping at night. And every time I hear a noise, I'm worried that someone is breaking into my house.
This neighborhood used to be real calm and peaceful. Now we're in a high state of alert and chaos, so I'm really feeling frustrated right now.
You know, my wife and my children, we came here about 3 years. I work in the evening. When I heard about this, I worry a lot because I worry about my kids will think it's okay to do this. And I don't want them to do this. I want them to go to school, be good kids. I don't want them to join the gang because I came from Vietnam. I want a good life here. So it impacts my life. It also worries me as a father that I don't have time for my kids.
You know, my nephew's basically a good kid. I know he does get into a little bit of trouble. I think we've all gotten into a little trouble as we grow up. His mother and I have talked on several occasions on what we can do to maybe help him. And maybe this is what it took for us to finally get with Jim and find out how he can repair the harm that he's done to the community.
Some programs combine these approaches, allowing for both the small, more intimate meeting between victim and offender, followed later by a much larger circle gathering of family and community members. This would typically be done with more serious offenses that have a greater impact on the community.
Now, mediation has grown to be used in many other settings in our country, in divorce and custody issues, in neighborhood conflicts, in many commercial transactions where there's conflicts that have developed. And in those settings, the people involved in the conflict are called disputants, as though they're both contributing to the conflict, because they are. That's very, very different in victim-offender mediation and conferencing. In victim-offender mediation, it's a very different type of mediation. It's called humanistic mediation, which is dialogue-driven. It's really focused on creating a safe place so people can come together after preparation and just be able to talk openly to each other, with the mediator very much in the background, so that they can get answers to questions they have, so they can express the real impact the crime has had on all of their lives, and so that together they can work out some form of repairing the harm. The key points in humanistic mediation, first, is separate pre-mediation sessions with the victim and their support people, as well as the offender and their support people. And typically you meet with the offender first, and then you meet with the victim. Frankly, you don't want to get the victim's expectations up if the offender is not willing to participate. And the process of victim-offender mediation and conferencing is meant to be voluntary for both parties. Offenders are not to be ordered into it against their will. That could, in fact, re-victimize the victim if that occurred. So the first step in humanistic mediation is having the mediator, and sometimes there's a co-mediator as well, go out and meet the offender, and typically the offender's parent or another person. If they're an adult, it might be a partner or a husband or wife. And during that separate meeting, the mediators listen to their story, they explain what the process is about, invite their participation, and then if the offender, the person who actually committed the crime, if they're interested in going further, then the mediator will explain what the process is and kind of walk them through it to lower their anxiety, so that when they come together, they're more able to engage in a conversation with the other person. You don't want to prepare them so much that you literally tell them what to say. No, that's not what it's about. But it's to minimize anxiety so that they feel prepared enough to come into the session and engage in a conversation with the other person. And similarly, if the offender is willing to participate, then the mediators would go out and meet separately with the victim. And during that time, the mediators would listen to their story the impact the crime had on their lives. And the person who was victimized would then be told what this program is about. Their participation would be invited. And if they're interested in doing this, then the mediator would give more detailed information about how the process works, what to expect, and to talk about what their expectations are. So the first step in a humanistic style of mediation is preparation of both parties beforehand, before just bringing them together in a joint mediation session or a conferencing session. The second step is a real emphasis on connecting with the parties, maintaining your impartiality, not taking sides with either, but you want to really connect with them at a human level and not just be kind of a removed, totally aloof kind of person. You want to get to know them and for them to know you so they begin to feel comfortable with you. The third major focus is on creating a safe place where people can feel comfortable enough to open up so they can speak from the heart as well as the head. And that's not likely to happen unless those people feel comfortable with you, the mediator, as well as having a reasonably good idea of what to expect, so it minimizes some of their anxiety. The fourth key point is the focus is on the dialogue between the parties. In many forms of mediation and other settings, mediators are talking a lot, frankly. In a humanistic style of mediation, the parties are prepared well enough in advance so when they're brought together in the actual session, mediators don't talk a lot. Mediators begin with an opening statement. They make a few comments here and there and wrap it up. But most of the time, the mediators are very much in the background. The people are talking directly with each other. And that leads to the fifth key step. And that is a very non-directive style of mediation. Mediators using a humanistic style, which has been found to be very helpful in working with those who have been victimized by crime and those who have committed it. Mediators are very much in the background. They get out of the way. They're totally emotionally present. They can intervene just real quickly if something comes up, but they very consciously try to stay in the background so that the people most affected by this crime can talk with each other.
The importance of meeting separately with each party prior to the mediation session cannot be emphasized enough. These pre-mediation sessions are central to building trust, providing information, and creating a safe place for the eventual dialogue. The important thing is to remain focused on creating a safe place where parties can engage in direct conversation with one another. Whenever possible, the wishes of both victim and offender should be respected regarding who is present, how many are present, whether to sit round a table or in an open circle, and where and when the mediation session is held. Mediators should always be alert to cultural dynamics and find ways to adapt the process to the diverse needs of participants.
So, Jim, we'd like to hear what happened that night from your perspective.
Well, some friends and I were, cruising around and looking for something to do, and we were kind of short on cash, and somebody brought up the idea of breaking into a home, and they all pointed fingers at me saying I should do it, and I guess the pressure just was too great, and so I did it, and I went in and took a TV, took some jewelry and some cash, and then left.
Ms. Mattson, we'll be telling you about how our program works, but maybe we should start with your story. Just what happened the night your home was burgled.
It was just awful. I couldn't believe it was happening to me again in my own home. I'd come in and I just knew something wasn't right. It's just awful.
As a member of the community and as our next door neighbor, how does this make you feel?
It makes you think about whether you want to stay there or not. We don't even, do they ever catch the people? Do they even know what they did? I mean, do they feel any remorse for it? She and I live alone. We call each other all the time, but it's like, we can't protect one another. We don't feel safe anymore.
Over the years, in dialogue with many former critics, and in many, many dialogues with victim advocates who were among those critics, we've learned a lot. We've learned how to make the process more victim-sensitive. And in making the process more sensitive to those people who have been victimized by crime, that doesn't mean that you're not also sensitive to offenders. But it means that there's extra deference shown to people who have been victimized. After all, they had this done to them. And some of the key points in making the process victim-sensitive are the following. First, always keep in mind victim safety, that victims feel safe and comfortable with the process. Absolutely important. Safe with where meetings are held, safe the time of the day or evening when they're held. Very important to always think of victim safety. Second is victim choice. Victims of crime have choice throughout the entire process. These people who have been violated by some kind of criminal act, they have a choice on whether to participate or not. They have a choice on, they should have a choice on where to meet separately, where to meet together, what time they should be asked, when would they find it the most convenient to hold meetings, including the joint session when the offender comes in, if they're willing. And frankly, they have choice on every point in the process possible. And I cannot overemphasize the importance on that. It's so easy for professionals and well-meaning volunteers to make choices for other people, rather than asking the person most affected by this, the victim of crime, where would you find it helpful to meet? Is this a convenient time? The third key point in making the process sensitive to crime victims is the issue of victim support. Always asking people who have been victimized by crime, would it be helpful if someone else came with you at the mediation session, at the conferencing session? And they might, some victims of crime want to bring a spouse or a partner or a neighbor. Others might want to bring a victim advocate who's been working with them. And that's part of creating a safe place and meeting their needs. And finally, the absolute three most crucial elements of making the process of victim-offender mediation and conferencing victim-sensitive and ultimately sensitive to offenders as well is preparation, preparation, and preparation. And I really mean that. The quality of an actual conference and mediation session to really engage the parties in dialogue with the mediator not having to talk a lot is directly linked to working with these people beforehand in meeting with them, either wherever they want to meet, frankly, in a neighborhood center, in their homes, coming into your office, wherever they feel comfortable, and listening to their story first, then explaining the program, and then inviting their participation. The preparation work cannot be overemphasized. It's extremely important.
You have just seen and heard many specific suggestions about humanistic mediation, victim-sensitive practice, and actual techniques such as who the mediator should meet with at first and who should be encouraged to begin telling their perspective during the mediation session. These are based on common practices among many programs. However, some programs have found other approaches quite helpful as well. Adapting the process to the specific needs of the involved parties, their cultural context, and the practical realities is often required. As an informational video, we hope you have found this helpful. Actual training in victim offender mediation and conferencing, however, requires far more information, role-playing, and apprenticeship with an experienced mediator. Whether it's called mediation, conferencing, meetings, or circles, the most important thing is to focus on creating a safe place so that those most affected by crime can enter into a direct dialogue about its effect and the need to repair the harm caused by specific criminal acts. It's all about building a greater sense of connectedness, accountability, and peace within and among our many diverse communities. Studies of restorative justice in North America, Europe, and the South Pacific have found that the general public is supportive of many restorative justice interventions, particularly victim-offender mediation, family group conferencing, peacemaking circles, restitution, and community service. Victims of crime involved in victim-offender mediation programs are more likely to say they were treated fairly by the justice system. Offenders involved in victim-offender mediation programs are more likely to be held directly accountable to individuals and communities they harmed. Victims of crime are more likely to receive restitution for their losses. Offenders are more likely to complete their restitution obligation to their victim. Victims of crime are less fearful of re-victimization after meeting the offender and telling them the impact of the crime. Offenders in victim-offender mediation programs commit fewer and less serious additional crimes. For those interested in receiving more information about restorative justice, victim-offender mediation, conferencing, or peacemaking circles, including articles, information packets, research reports, books, videotapes, and training and technical assistance, contact the Center for Restorative Justice and Peacemaking at the University of Minnesota.